Thanks, Aaron. Thank you. And I'm so happy that the actual moderator of this panel is sick and he's not here. So I'm going to host on his behalf. And this is my favorite panel, by the way. I have Zeneca, who is just joined our council member. He's investor in Polytrade. So happy to have him on board. I have Isha from Celo. So happy to chat. Celo is doing some great stuff on blockchain space. I have Seckin, one of my favorite companies as we are together in the MasterCard Start Path, and they're doing incredible job in onboarding users in Web3. And of course, I have, Chris. Chris, I would like to learn a bit more. I don't know much about you guys, so it will be good to know. Everybody's chatting about Plume, by the way. So I guess you're doing something great. Okay, I won't take much time because we are already quite late in the journey. So I'll keep it very short and sweet. I'll start with you, Zeneca. You've been an OG in the space. Everybody knows you have quite a reputation since the last bull cycle. You've done great stuff on Zen Academy. You've great. I think the whole community building. I've really learned or seen from you guys. So one question, this panel is all about GTM, right? Where is the product market fit? What is the go-to-market strategy? When you look at RWA, what is your thought process behind it? Like how do products needs to start their GTM journey?
Yeah, I think it's kind of an extension of the last panel. The last panel was talking a lot about abstracting away the technology and making it easy for users and the importance of education. I think the same applies when you think about going to market. There's sort of two markets in crypto. You have the existing crypto users and then you have the rest of the world. And obviously the rest of the world is a much bigger market that we eventually want to tap into. But in order to do that, you have to educate, you have to make the products easy to use, appealing to use. I think one of the beauties of RWAs are that they are inherently just valuable. They sort of unlock liquidity around the world. They allow the tokenization of basically anything. People already trade commodities, real estate, Pokemon cards, Rolexes. So giving people a way to do that just in a better way is just a great product. And then, yeah, it'll just come down to education, I think, and abstracting away the technology.
That makes a lot of sense, right? And in the first panel, we were with Sandeep, and Sandeep mentioned that, we still think about building products for crypto native people, which is a very handful of people, right? And somebody needs to do that. I don't want to call it dirty job, but to do something where Web2 users can come on board much easily, right? So that brings me to next question, Isha. You guys have been an OG in this space, you guys are there for a long time, and now whole this RW adoption is happening. How do you guys see, what approach are you taking at your organization level?
Yeah, so as you know, Celo from day zero, we've been around for 4 years, and from day zero, we are very mission focused. Our mission is prosperity for all. Essentially, from day zero, we've been building for like real world use cases, right? And so our focus has always been like the next wave of crypto, right? We're always talking about onboarding the next billion, not really building for crypto natives, right? Essentially, the chain allows for this because you have stuff like Social Connect, which allows for anybody can sign up to a crypto wallet with your phone number, right? That's what I know, that's what like my mom knows, so essentially that's what we've been building on from day zero. And so RWA is a really great natural extension to that. It's essentially bringing in, it's a really complicated word, right? A real world asset sounds so like massive, right? But it's basically tokenizing anything, right? It's anything and everything, right? And so the way I see RWAs in my ecosystem is essentially is like, yeah, let's tokenize everything that people know about, but also like providing access to that, right? For instance, the US government bonds, people outside the US cannot save in the US government bonds, right? A big focus for us at our Celo is like emerging markets, especially Africa, for instance, right? Allowing people in Africa, especially in countries where you have like really crazy fluctuating currencies such as Nigeria, to hold money in a dollar-denominated currency. That is a big step. Like that's step one. That's like we're increasing stable stakes already, right? And then you're like, hey, now we can provide you yield or interest in their case to whatever money that you hold from a US government bond, right? That's like saying we're multiplying your money by like a massive percentage, right? And so like it's also tokenization of assets is like, I think really interesting because like, it's something that like we've been doing from time immemorially, right? Like you have REITs, right? Like what is REITs? REITs is essentially that, right? But it's also providing access. I think that's the key differentiator for me, right? And at an ecosystem level, we're really, really optimistic about this, right? Because like access is really important to us. We have multiple programs that kind of like build towards this. We have community programs called a Credit Collective, which is like literally a community-based funded program that's like investing in private credit and any kind of credit in the RWA. Essentially, it rolls up into the RWA space, but it's also, we've launched like USDC and USDT as like stablecoins, native USDC and USDC for like, again, increasing access. So I think for us, access is really important. The more RWAs that are tokenized and the more we're able to enable access to retail users, that's essentially where we are at.
That's very interesting because you touched base on one very critical point, that how do we generate demand, right? And if you don't provide a user right tools, how would I buy a tokenized asset if I don't have digital currency in my wallet, right? And that brings me to Seckin, because Seckin is from Cenoa. He's based out of Istanbul, building brilliant product and did great work in Africa. And you guys are just launched in Turkey. That's what I know. Second, you're like, how has been your experience in, first of all, going to these masses who do not understand crypto, but they want dollars? Like, I understand their psyche that I want to get my hands on dollars because my currency is depreciating every day, right?
Yes.
That first step from 0 to 1 is the toughest journey. And as Isha mentioned, once you have USDT, USDC in your wallet, then you can tempt them to buy any tokenized asset. That's what we are working together on. But,
Exactly.
but how has been your journey so far?
Great question. Maybe if I summarize Cenoa in like one sentence, it's a digital dollar account that's aimed for high inflation markets like Nigeria, Turkey, and others. And we use stable coins to make it easy to access dollars and dollar banking services, dollar transactions in an easier and cheaper way. And to your question, when we started Cenoa 2 years ago, there were a lot of exciting use cases in crypto, but our background is in Web 2. I spent 15 years in building, growing traditional financial products. And we realized it will be difficult to onboard 1 billion people to crypto. We need to go to where they are and start with their own problems, their own language, and their own platforms. So when we built Cenoa, it looks exactly like PayPal, Revolut, or Chime, because people don't know crypto and they don't want to know because they are really busy. Life in Nigeria or Turkey is already chaotic, already stressful, already busy. They are trying to survive. We try to make crypto part as invisible as possible and focused on their biggest pain points and the value proposition, the benefits. And as a result, it decreased the friction a lot. It made it a lot lower, and we have seen more than 350,000 people signing up, creating accounts. Thousands of people funded those accounts. And then after they have it, it's easier to cross-sell them other real-world assets. Now that I have $1, I can offer them, you can buy US treasuries, you can buy a piece of land, a piece of gold. And again, tokenizing real-world assets in terms of framing and language would not work for them. So again, we would focus on their day-to-day language and how they perceive the problem and the solution. But I think the key was we started with a huge pain point they have, and we developed the value proposition in a way that they would understand. Plus, now we are focused on B2B2C. Like, we are trying to go where they are. Like, we are integrating with banks, fintechs, e-commerce platforms, because they are already in those platforms for their other needs, and that's where they want to do their banking and money transactions. So the second wave for us is, now that we build our consumer side, we build our APIs and we will go where they are. Because consumers, they don't like to join new platforms. So we will not onboard them to RWA, but we will onboard RWA to their day-to-day life, basically.
Yeah, so I think, as people say, if you can't take a user to technology, bring technology to user, right? So great answer. Thank you so much. That brings me to Chris. Chris, we keep hearing that there are so many RWA protocols coming. We very randomly, rarely hear that a RWA chain is coming, right? So very different narrative. And unlike typical GTM approach of other chains, how are you looking at this market differently?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a couple things. Thinking about a chain versus protocol. Look, I mean, I think ultimately when you think about RWAs, what everyone's talking about is usually like the idea of how do we bring new people in, right? That's the idea in RWAs, right? The idea is implicit in if we have a bunch of things that people are familiar with, we bring them into crypto, right? And then that should increase the pie for everybody, right? And that's like the point here. So that's why we talk a lot about education, a lot about use case, all these things. At the end of the day, though, like if you talk to an RWA project today, I think one of the number one problems is infrastructure. It's a pain in the ass to build an RWAs. It's just a fact, right? Like taking anything in the real world and putting it on chain is a fucking nightmare. You know, everyone knows that, and it's just a problem today. So I think there's a lot to do to fix that, and that's the reason why we did this, right? The chain to me is a way to facilitate that. It's not to hoard it, and it's not to create our own ecosystem that's focused on this. At the end of the day, I think what people forget is this: on chain today is what, $2-3 trillion in total, right? The off-chain world is several orders of magnitude bigger, right? And so the idea is very simple. If we can suck a bunch of things off-chain, on-chain, right, and make that easier in any means possible, that's the important thing today, right? And we think that by combining a lot of the tooling we have and the infrastructure we've built with Plume into a unique way allows us to bring these things in and put them on chain and bring more in. But it's not only us, right? Again, look, the idea that you're gonna have one chain of these things is also ridiculous. We've already seen just for crypto native assets, there's a bunch of chains, right? So the idea that you're gonna have an even bigger asset class with one chain doesn't make any sense either. So the idea really for us is how do you just make the onboarding process easier, and how do you take in some things and bring them on in a straight way? But like we're very open to everything, right? At the end of the day, I think at the end of the day, for a go-to-market perspective, what I think about usually is it's not only the products. I think a lot of people when they think about RWAs and go to market, they think about asset class. What asset class fits? What types of things come into play? Is it treasuries? Is it real estate? Is it this? Is this? All that's nonsense, right? At the end of the day, what actually matters is what are the use cases that we're solving here, and what's the problem that's coming on? And the thing that most people miss in this conversation is you need to both match the use case to the people that are actually on chain today, right? What are the actual people there? Because I think we can talk all day about what are the types of things we should bring on chain, and there's a bunch of things we can talk about. There's access stuff, there's fragmentation. All these things are great and real. The question is sequencing, right? What thing comes first? What comes second? How do you bring that? It's a marketplace, right? You ultimately have to bring users and assets on at the same time to actually make it useful. Otherwise, you'll have a bunch of Rolexes sitting around that nobody wants to trade, right? So you have to bring those things on at the same time. And the question really is, what are the things that thread the needle between both on-chain use cases and off-chain use cases that are actually useful today versus just one or the other? And so in my opinion, for us at least, it really is about how do we create an ecosystem around this? How do we build the tooling that makes it easy? And then also create a community where everyone can work together to try and help us. Because look, if we had the answers, we would know and we would do it already. I think at the end of the day, the idea that we can figure out it's not possible, it's having everyone come together to work together. That's why it's working with great people like all around. And it's across everything, both the infrastructure, the applications, tooling, education on top. It's the whole thing together. And so that's how we think about go-to-market. It's not just asset class. It's not just can we get more dApps on. That's, of course, part of it. It's how do you bring the whole thing together in order to actually create an ecosystem where, at the end of the day, if people come in and they go to Plume, that's what I prefer. But if they go somewhere else, I don't care either. At the end of the day, what matters is everyone's coming in and we're all working together to grow the entire market for RWAs versus just one thing. And so that's how we think about it. And of course, again, if we think the pie grows for everybody, then we should also it'll also grow for us. So that's how we think about it versus one asset class, one piece. It's how do we think about the RWA market in totality and then sort of figure out sequencing-wise, what are the pieces missing across every part of the stack and then put that together.
I think doing great job in building the infra, and we're super excited to get some protocols from your chain on marketplace. That brings me to Julian. Pretty interesting protocol, Julian. You have launched a very unique product which is kind of bringing DeFi and bonds together. How has been your journey so far, and what are your learnings from this?
Yeah, great question. Our product, I think the way we approach things has been very DeFi first. We work with other protocols at this point in time, and we really wanted to approach things from a perspective of building the infrastructure that would allow protocols to essentially access a lot of what I would call TradFi tooling, or a lot of things that you would find in the traditional finance world, or even outside of traditional finance, but just off-chain, generally speaking, and make those tools available to them on-chain, right? And so from that perspective, we co-authored an ERC that effectively is able to few things, but the main thing is it's a token standard for vesting tokens through an NFT, right? And so this was able to provide a lot of value to the projects that we work with, and we're right now kind of exploring the real-world assets application of this. But again, we've approached this really from a DeFi first perspective, working with these different on-chain teams and kind of allowing them to find solutions outside of, well, on-chain effectively, right? And I think the main things that we learned from this are, well, first off, from a user perspective, we're kind of exiting the, I'd say, DeFi craze of the past couple of years where everybody was, expecting ridiculous 200-300% yields on everything that they're doing, or even above, which a lot of that was fueled by Ponzi-nomics and just general lack of care for token economies, right? Just easy, quick money. And we're seeing that users, especially on our platform and on a lot of other real-world asset platforms today, are happy with single-digit yields. You know what I mean? And obviously, it'd be great if we can get those yields higher in a reasonable manner. But it feels like the space is maturing quite a bit. People are settling for single-digit yields at this point, and it's great to see that. Definitely a sign of maturation. I'd say the second big thing that we identified is that right now, on-chain teams are still seeking out off-chain solutions when it comes to fundraising, when it comes to liquidating assets, when it comes to just generally, again, figuring out their economic situation or even profiting from the token side of their business model. So that's been a very interesting kind of learning for us, and we're really working towards bringing that activity back on-chain. And I'd say the third biggest thing is infrastructure is disparate today, right? As noted by you as well, we're all over the place right now. There's a lot of competing token standards, a lot of competing protocols. No clear winners have been identified yet, and it's awesome from a perspective of competition, right? These products are getting on the market, and we're seeing a lot more activity, but we haven't gotten to the real rate of adoption that I think we'll see once clear winner is identified, or once we all start using similar standards and working together towards kind of making those the standard across the industry. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey for sure, and we're definitely curious to see what the next step is for us, and especially being able to leverage our current infrastructure and apply that to RWAs.
I think one thing you don't need to worry, because however sexy crypto markets and equity markets, their fixed income will always be there. So we are in good hands. One question which is common for all, and I would like to have your input on that. So and it's a very touchy topic for many people about KYC users, right? To go to market or to find a PMF, it's very difficult for protocols to figure out whether I need to do KYC or I'm making it open for people, right? And everybody is taking different approach, and as a marketplace we are exploring these 90+ protocols, and we are figuring out financial products are sometimes very gated, and I just want to get your take on this, that what do you think, what should be the ideal scenario and what should be the next steps for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that KYC is always a touchy subject in crypto. There's always, I mean, if you think of when crypto was created, it was really born out of these ideals of non-KYC. It's about being autonomous and unidentifiable and not having the government know who you are and be able to track you and all that kind of stuff. And so anytime you talk about KYC and on-chain, there's always going to be friction. But I think in the real world, there are certain financial products that you just need to KYC for, at least the way that the laws of the world currently are. Like, we're all citizens of countries, and our governments have laws, and if we want to live in those countries, then if you're a business, there are regulations you have to comply with, and that's where we are right now. So I think that basically we're going to live in a future, at least for the foreseeable future, where there's going to be some platforms, products, blockchains that require KYC, but there'll always, hopefully, be those that aren't, like Bitcoin, for instance, and many, many others, where you can transact trustlessly without KYC. You just might not be able to buy and sell a certain financial product that requires KYC. And I think that's a fine middle ground, and that's probably where we're going to end up. It's going to be complex, and not everyone's going to be happy, but that's the world, yeah.
Yeah, and look, KYC sucks. I mean, everyone knows that, right? Like, I would say, if you ask around who actually KYCs on a regular basis, the answer is going to be nobody in this room, right? Like, nobody actually likes doing it. It sucks, even in the real world, right? Even in trad, it sucks. It's not better or worse on chain. And so the question goes back to the same thing, which is like, at the end of the day, you have to look at what products, who are the people actually on chain? What's the market today? Who's actually on chain? And what are the attributes of products that those people will use, right? And that's, to me, it's a starting point in the question for everything. Is if you look at on-chain people today, the reality is nobody wants to KYC. And so by bringing in a bunch of KYC products, right? A lot of people think RWAs equals KYC, or a lot of people, RWAs equals tokenization, which equals some financial instruments or whatever. It's just not true, right? But there is a heavy overlap, of course. And so if you look at these products today, like the reality is if you bring a bunch of KYC products on chain, nobody's gonna use them. That's just the reality, right? And so like we can build all this infrastructure, do all this nonsense in the world, but like it's just not gonna happen. And so you have to understand how, again, how do you sequence things to actually provide some uses? And look, it will change. More trad folks will come on chain, more financial instruments will come on chain, and more things will come on chain where people want to and will go through the pain of KYCing, but that's not the current state of the world today. So to lean heavily into that, in my opinion, is a mistake right now. Again, it's not to mean that you don't have it. None of these things are black and white, don't do it or not do it. It's always shades of gray, right? And you sort of take a look at what's the percentage of people that will do it. I'd say, look, it's a small percentage of products should do this today, and then over time you should expand and come to it, right? So it's not don't do it or do it. It's when do you do it, and how do you do it in a way that is useful, and then how do you actually change the dynamics of it so when you do have to do it, it sucks less, right? Like today, if you go to Protocol A in KYC, right, you go through this stupid process, and then you KYC. You go to Protocol B, you got to do the exact same nonsense, right? It doesn't realize you've done it, even though we're supposed to be interoperable and all this stuff, right? So like, there are a lot of things we can do to make KYC better when it has to happen, right? That's the first starting point. And second is to understand when do we actually apply it, and is it actually doing something that makes the user's life better? And we all know this. If it makes the user's life better, people will do it. The reason why people don't do it, because nobody wants it, and you have to do a shitty process, so of course it is not used today, right? So that's like the reality of KYC today, and that's how we should think about it.
Great take. Yeah, Isha, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you, kind of though, right? KYC sucks, I agree, but I think there's definitely products and asset classes that require KYC. But I'm coming from an ecosystem where like, even though some users might want to do KYC, are unable to, right? Like think of like, I mean, some folks don't have national identity. If you're thinking about like bringing the next wave of users to crypto, then some of them can't KYC, right? So my ecosystem is all around like, how do we bypass KYC? Not because it sucks, but it does. But despite it sucking, even if they want to, they can't, right? And so like, can we think of like, and the point of Web3 in my mind is to like disrupt existing models, right? And so can we think of models where, okay, yeah, this product needs KYCing from a regulatory perspective, right? And so maybe the first issuance of that product is KYC, and then you have a secondary market where you are able to then further digitalize or tokenize. Or I don't know what the solution is, right? But there's a way in which we can say, okay, now that the first issuance is KYC'd, second issuance is like available to folks that A, do not want to KYC, or B, cannot KYC, right? And so like Chris said, right, like there has to be like a proper order of things, and we're not at a point where like non-KYC products are like available that broadly across the spectrum. I hope there's a world in which that's the path that we're going towards.
Great answer. Second, I think you've been dealing with this issue for a very long time. So.
I agree. And KYC, actually, behind that word, there are a lot of different things. It sucks, and there are many things behind it. For example, the reason why a lot of people in Nigeria, Turkey, or Argentina cannot buy American stocks or American banking on the front end is KYC, right? You cannot open an American bank account because of KYC, but that's why when you say KYC, a lot of people, if the product is valuable, they don't mind letting go of the anonymity. Like, they are happy to share their passport picture, but as long as you don't block them from accessing the product, and as long as you don't make the process very difficult. Like, we have startup customers who are trying to get USDC to earn yield, but I have some customers like, they are doing 17th round of document exchanges with an OTC just to buy the USDC and earn yield. Then it becomes the value they are going to get from that yield versus the startup team trying to pass KYC becomes unreasonable. So I agree. Some people don't really worry about sharing their identity, but the value they will get should be correlated with the friction they will face. And if we can make it invisible or one time or disappear completely, even better, because then it expands the number of users and number of products they would love to buy. As long as the friction is high, then it will shrink the market considerably. And we have seen some smart players and smart tactics, minimizing friction. If you think about Amazon one-click payment experience, this is like a 15-year-old technology, but when they launched one-click, as opposed to typing your credit card, their sales like went up by 10 times. I worked at Kindle department for a couple of months. The book sales went up by 10x just because it was one click. We have seen this in payments, and there are some smart KYC applications as well, like fiat on-ramps in Turkey. Below a certain amount, they just ask for your citizenship number. That's it. And they check if it's real or not. So it's a 10-second KYC process, so people love it. It's even better than TradFi, and it actually becomes a competitive advantage for crypto versus TradFi because it just takes a couple of seconds to open a dollar bank account as opposed to hours. But if the friction grows with other products like US Treasuries or OTC deals, yeah, it sucks and it can kill the market.
Yeah, very interesting. And I guess because you are onboarding users directly from bank, you know that at one level they have already KYC'd with the bank, right? So you don't need to really engage with them again to force them to do KYC with you.
Exactly, because we know they are sending the funds from a bank account and we can get certain information from banks that this person is not a terrorist, the money is clean, etc. And as long as the citizenship numbers match, we can give them USDC. So that means the sucking KYC part is already done by the banks and we can onboard them to crypto. It's an advantage for us. And I think for platforms like yourself, I think it can be a competitive advantage. Meaning, if I'm a consumer, I don't want to go to 50 different protocols and KYC every time. But if you give me a soul-bound token with KYC, I can freely roam within your walled garden. I would love to do that.
It's a tough battle to win. Reusable KYCs are still a myth, but yeah, we're trying to solve that. That brings me to Julian. Julian, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. I definitely agree with the other points that have made so far. From our perspective, like it's a very interesting question. Obviously, we're a DeFi first protocol, and so everything, most of what we do is permissionless. So for us, we almost look at KYC as kind of the boogeyman in the room to a certain extent. Definitely our users do, and we definitely look to find ways in which we can avoid KYC at all costs, but not necessarily from the perspective of, we don't want to do anything illicit, obviously, but we want to ensure that users, as much access as they can, to your point, a lot of people can't KYC for one reason or another, right, and still want to get access to these. So for us, it's more about looking, how can we build on top of the work that's being done by others, either through, these interoperable KYC opportunities that can be, leveraged, I'd say, a bit more easily or without necessarily blocking off all your products or having specific products that are kind of blocked by that, or what can we do on our end as well to, I'm not sure, just explore different facets of it. I think the big thing for us, again, from a KYC perspective, is it's just not our first kind of priority or the first thing that we look at, again, as a DeFi protocol, but I know that there are ways that we can tap into it, and I know that there are specific products that we can offer to our users, as well as geofencing and other kind of opportunities that can present themselves there.
I think we have covered quite a lot on GTM, and because we are really closing the time, so we have 2 more panels to go after this. But thank you everyone. This is really interesting, and I've learned a lot because I'm going to launch our marketplace tomorrow. So for me, the whole GTM strategy is really what we want to figure it out. Thank you everyone.